It's a great pleasure to welcome our outside visitors to this retreat at the Greenberg Conference Center and, by extension, at Yale Sociology. Bringing fieldwork back in is enriched by your contributions, just as the social sciences and humanities are by your collective labor and conversations. The gathering speaks of the burgeoning ethnographic tradition here nurtured by my colleague Eli Anderson's Urban Ethnography Project. As a faculty member of the Sociology Department, and since last summer, department chair, I've been delighted to see the project gaining ever more momentum. It's the nodal site for a fantastic series of visitors who share their work and experiences with all of us, for wonderful student projects, and, not least important, for a different sort of relationship between the denizens of Yale and those who live in Greater New Haven. It also tantalizes us with a vision of collaboration between ethnographers and cultural theorists in the U.S. and abroad. I suspect that Eli is going to talk about this aspect, so let me just say that I'm delighted to see the concerns of this retreat cross-cutting the Urban Ethnography Project, and here at Yale also the Center for Cultural Sociology, where Jeff Alexander, Ron Ironman, Phil Smith, and their students illuminate meaning-making in social life, and their affiliates and visitors. In 1964, the then president of the ASA, George Homans, gave what became a famous and to some infamous presidential address, Bringing Men Back In. It tried to shift the disciplinary focus to individual actors and their doings. And it had an enemy. It was directed at what Homans called the innocuous tradition of structural functionalism, the ruling paradigm of the time. Bringing Men Back In waved the flag of a powerful yet intellectual minority tradition of analysis unheeded by the mainstream. It also diagnosed the repressed dependence of that mainstream on that minority tradition. Quote, if a serious effort is made to construct theories that will even begin to explain social phenomena, it turns out that their general propositions are not about the equilibrium of societies, but about the behavior of men, Homans said. Quote, this is true even of some good functionalists, though they will not admit it. They keep psychological explanations under the table and bring them out furtively like a bottle of whiskey for use when they really need help, unquote. It was a great metaphor. I'm not yet sure the analog is going to be argued here about the relationship between the mainstream and the powerful minority tradition. However, I suspect that the conference will treat not just men, but also women. Some things have changed in sociology since 1964. I'm deeply curious about what precisely is to be brought back in and who, intellectually speaking, has done the leaving out. Finally, I see an interesting possibility for a meeting of minds with my own interdisciplinary tribe of historical comparativists. For one thing that links Homans' Bringing Men Back In, which gave us the Bringing Back In meme, is Peter Evans, Theda Scotchpole's, and Dietrich Ruschemeyer's 1985 Bringing the State Back In, which we are going to celebrate and deconstruct on a 25 years later panel at the Social Science History Association meeting later this month in Chicago. In the manner of the children's poem, Robert Browning's How They Brought the Good News from Gaunt to X, I will certainly bring your words there, at least those that you want brought there. So now to bringing fieldwork back in. I can't wait to hear more about this and to hear the papers themselves, so I will pass the gavel to Eli Anderson, whom I know will be thanking the people who deserve to be thanked, as well as intellectually opening the conference. Welcome, everybody.
Good morning, and welcome. Welcome to Yale, welcome to New Haven, welcome to this beautiful center. I don't know how we got this. Tony Blair has classes here, and so does a number of other folks. But I wasn't thinking of Homans when we thought of this title, Bringing Fieldwork Back In, but it's interesting. It's interesting. The truth is that to my mind, fieldwork has been left out, maybe ignored, maybe not paid attention to as much, not respected as much. And it used to not be that way. If we go back to the turn of the century when Chicago began sociology. Sociology began at Chicago, 1892. We had people like Albion Small, we had Charles Henderson, we had Ernest Burgess, W.I. Thomas at the University of Chicago. And eventually Robert Park, who came to Chicago in the summer, I guess, of 1918, 1917, and stayed for a long time. And during that time, he wrote this seminal piece entitled Suggestions for the Investigation of Human Behavior in the Urban Environment, which basically laid out an outline for American sociology. It was seminal. And all across the country, ultimately, sociology took its lead from what was kind of laid out in that seminal piece. But for the next 30 years, Park encouraged the students to go out and get their hands dirty in real research. And as you know, they studied dance halls, they studied neighborhoods, they studied ghettos, they studied gangs, they studied all kinds of things. They described what was going on. And of course, the country was undergoing great change, as was the whole Western world, more towards industrialism and urbanization, that kind of thing. There's always an issue of the family in the context of industrialization, the family in terms of urbanization, race relations in terms of urbanization, that kind of thing, taking account of the big growth of cities, the changes that were going on, you see. And now, we as a country, as a society, as an economy, are moving through great and just profound change, from manufacturing to service and high technology, all in the context of an increasingly global economy where great numbers of people are not making an effective adjustment to this transition. What we have left in its wake is structural poverty. But we also have energized these people who are competing for place and position in American culture and society and leaving casualties along the way as we move towards these big changes. And yet the best we can do is maybe some field work. And we have all this computer technology and high-tech this and ITS that, that kind of thing. And so there's a tendency to want to quantify everything, if you know what I mean. Quantify, 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 quantify. You have people who work in data sets, and they've never seen the people that they're talking about. They just have data sets, and they work out of this, and we get this as a representation of reality. I'm not saying this is wrong, but we need to have a corrective to that, if you know what I mean. We need to bring fieldwork back in. We need to go back to the source. We need to describe what's going on. We need to do fieldwork. We need to observe. We need to apprehend, comprehend, understand, and represent that reality that's there in solid description. And if we did so, this work would be informative for so many other people who are grappling with these issues, I believe, if you know what I mean. Howard Becker, my old teacher, Mitch's old teacher, Jack's old teacher, and he's taught a lot of people by his work, used to say in seminars, he used to say, if people that you're studying can't recognize themselves in your work, then we need to go back to the drawing board. I'm paraphrasing what he used to tell us, but that's it. So we need to go back to the drawing board and bring them in. And I think we need to bring fieldwork back in. We need to do that. This is not to pose it as an antinomy to quantitative work or mixed methods or what have you. But we need to bring in this description of people doing things together in these environments and have it work side by side with the other ways of grappling with issues, is what I'm saying. And I see that absence, and I think we have to correct it in some way by going out and doing field work. And this isn't, again, I quickly say this isn't a position that should be taken as an attack on any particular area. I think that Lazarsfeld, who was one of the great quantitative survey researchers at Columbia University, he was one of Howard Becker's heroes. And one of the reasons was that Lazarsfeld was something of a field worker, one of the most quantitative people around. He was sort of a field worker in the sense that he would use his observations from the field to inform his analyses, you see, and representations. And I just say I think we ought to be doing more of that, you see. And I thought that this would be a good theme for this conference as we work in the interstices of the presentations and network and communicate and relate to one another. We can reinforce some of these messages as people go about doing their work and thinking about what we do. So that's what I wanted to say, you know. I'm going to stop there, and because I know we're kind of short on time, but I wanted to just talk about bringing fieldwork back in as a theme and why this is so important. I believe that if we could do this, if we could just describe, not with ideology, you know, but just describe what people are doing together, how they live in cities, just describe with simple prose, you know, compelling prose, that would be worth a lot. A lot. It might change policy. You know, Harriet Beecher Stowe did with Uncle Tom's Cabin, one of the most widely read documents you can imagine. And it wasn't even ethnography. It was ethnographic, though, you know. I mean, to describe the slave situation the way she did was amazing. She had to be there in some way, if you know what I mean. But that isn't ethnography, but it's ethnographic, you see. And once in a while, work comes along that helps to change society like that. And Lincoln said to her when he met her, he said, "So you're the little woman who created this great war," you know. Well, of course, exaggeration, but still, I mean, the fact that she was able to represent that world to the people running the world at that time was very, very important. And so I'm suggesting that if we can just represent the situations of people living every day in solid prose, that may well be compelling enough to even inform some of the people who are making policy decisions, if you know what I mean. I'll stop there, but anyway, you get the message. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the rest of the time here. Thank you.